Okay, so we're going to get started this presentation today on partner level transitions and what law firms are looking for when they hire you. This, by the way, I think is probably one of the most important presentations of people that are either senior associates or partners, either with or without business, could watch. Because what I've noticed over the course of my career is about probably, I would say, 85% of the partners that I work for don't follow the recommendations that I'm going to present to you today. The same thing goes with senior associates that may not have business, or partners that may not have business, or even partners, particularly with business, don't follow these recommendations. So because they don't, they often end up unemployed or underemployed or believing that they need to go in-house. And that's just not the case. If you're a partner with business, you definitely do not need to go in-house. Partners with business try to do this all the time. But if you're a partner without business or a senior associate that's being pushed out of a firm away because you don't have business, you don't need to go in-house or do something else, because there are always law firms that will hire you if you do the things that I'm going to talk to you about today. So this is a very important presentation. You could actually change the direction of your career. I do believe that there's a lot more employment stability in law firms than going in-house. People that go in-house typically will bounce around between jobs when new CEOs come in or new general counsels, or they become cost center at a law firm and in-house job and lose their job. So I hope you pay a lot of attention to what I'm talking about today. I hope you take notes. At the end of this, take a short break of a few minutes, and getting a position as a partner are things that I've been doing for the past 25 years to help people. And they absolutely do work, and they can work regardless of what you think your current situation is. So, most people believe that they may be unemployed. I mean, they may not be able to get a position at a partner level, and anyone really can. Any senior attorney, if they know what they're doing, can get another job. That's just how it is. So I'm going to talk to you about that in a lot of detail today. So the first thing is, in 25 years of doing this and placing people several times a month that are senior with and without business, I have just a tremendous number of excuse me for that, a lot of advice that can help you move when if that's something that you're interested in doing or find a new job. One of the other things that kind of it makes me a little perplexed is people that are looking for jobs at a partner level often think that the law firm actually has to have a specific opening for them, and that's just not the case. Most law firms, probably 95% of law firms that hire people that are senior with and without business, never have an opening. It's not something that law firms are putting out there. They're not saying they have openings. They're just really responding and creating openings in response to your application. Meaning, if you have business, they're bringing you in, and I'll talk to you about why they do that and how they do that and how they make decisions based on that. They make decisions based on cross-selling opportunities. For example, they may not have anyone in your practice group, and they don't have enough, but they have work that they could be doing. Oftentimes, they will have institutional clients. So those institutional clients make it much less important for you to have business than to be able to service those clients. And then, of course, one of the things you're looking for is at any firm is if they have partner level work that you can do for other partners with large books of business that they can't service independently. So these are some of the things that they're looking for. One of the things that I want to bring up real quickly, just so everyone kind of understands how this works specifically, is most of the time when you're doing a search, if you don't have business, and even if you do, you're going to need to look at a lot of firms. And I'm going to talk to you about that today. Sometimes you will see jobs posted for law firms with partner level jobs that do not require business, but these are very, very rare. They're there, they occur, and they're typically for law firms with institutional clients needing attorneys that have a certain background that can do the work. But in general, the law firms are not. You're not seeing partner level jobs for attorneys. And regardless of whether or not you have business as a partner, you are marketable. I'll talk to you about why that is today and how you can market yourself. But if you have business, it's always much easier because every law firm, literally every law firm, is looking for attorneys' business, and so it's much easier. And the process of getting a position with a law firm at a partner level job is much more complex complex than an associate level job, because typically a law firm with associate level jobs will just put out, if they have an opening, they will contact recruiters if it's hard to fill. They will post jobs on LinkedIn and Indeed, and that's just kind of how they're filled. And when you're going to look for a position as a partner, really what you're doing is you're doing something a lot different. You're making a business proposition to them, like can they make money from you, from a business standpoint, instead of just having a job opening for someone. So I'm going to talk to you about how the strategies you can apply today with or without business. And I really want to make this clear to everyone that anybody that's at the partner level, I mean, unless you're, in your 70s without business, I mean, if you are an expert in a practice group and I'm in a practice area and you have a lot of experience in that practice area, meaning you've been doing work in that practice area for a long period of time, you can always find a position. And so I'm going to tell you today about the strategies I use with placing partners. I would say that in terms of my partner placements, probably 60 to 70% of them are for people without business. And so, anybody can get a position if you follow the strategies I'm going to tell you about below, whether or not you use me or you do it on your own. So again, law firms do not have specific openings for partners most of the time. And when they do hire them, they're basically looking for someone that can add value to the firm's business model. If you go to BCG's website, I mean, you will see positions posted for partners, but the majority of time, every law firm that has any type of practice area that you do or doesn't have enough people in that practice area is someone that can be hired. So as a partner, it's important to understand kind of what you're doing. So partners are viewed as businesses. They're not viewed, most partners, with business, they're viewed as business assets. And if you go into a law firm with business, essentially what you're doing is you're paying for offices, paying for staff, you're paying for a brand, you're paying for support, you're paying for someone to bill your clients, and there's a cost to that that's typically a percentage of your collections. Almost all law firms, when you break it down, this is just a piece of advice in terms of how it works for how you're compensated. If you are a partner with business, most of the time, when you look at the compensation you're receiving at the majority of firms, not all of them, but it's going to break down to be about a third of your collection. So if you have, $2 million in business and you're collecting one third, that you can get a sense of what your compensation would be. It's not always that, but it's typically about one third of what you bill. And then if you're a partner without business, law firms will provide you a platform to generate business if that's what you can do. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is partners with portable business, which are the easiest place, almost the most common path for most partners that are seeking, a position is to bring portable business. And business can be of any range that the law firm would be interested in. Once you get above $250,000, there's always going to be firms that are interested in your business. They may be very small firms, but there's always going to be people. And then some partners, will have over 3 million. And then even in major cities, you'll see people with over 30 million or even 40 or $50 million in business. And that's just kind of a whole different league. And I'll talk a little bit about that today. So it's important to understand that no law firm can function without partners with business. I mean, it's absolutely crucial for a law firm to be operational to have people with business. So partners can make more money and be higher profits per partner. They obviously need to support their overhead. They need to have people in different practice groups. And so if you have business, you are always marketable. I mean, it's just crazy how marketable you are. I mean, I was working recently with a real estate attorney in Colorado that only had $700,000 in business. And I think he received like 7 or 8 offers from even, pretty good middle market firms. And so it's kind of always like that. If someone does a search in the way I'm going to talk to you about today, and you do have business, there are always law firms that will hire you. That's just what it is. I mean, it just puts you in a very marketable position. And if you are an associate that's thinking, that wants to become a partner, or if you're a partner that wants to kind of improve your lot, it's always a great idea to try to get business, because when you get business, law firms work for you and not the other way around. You can take your business anywhere else, and you're actually operating a business when you have business, and you go to a firm that's going to provide you the most amount of money, the best brand, and whatever it is that you're going to require to be successful, and you're going to pay for it. And there's never job openings for hardly ever for partners with business. Now, law firms do put those out occasionally when someone leaves, or sometimes they'll just put jobs out like that. But if we were to list partner level jobs on BCG and make them up, we could literally do it for almost every firm out there. And again, it's important to kind of understand this dynamic. When you're a partner with business, it's not like as much as you're looking for a job is you're looking for a law firm to support you. And so you're shopping for a platform that supports your business in the way you want, and not the other way around. So an associate is typically looking for someone to give them a paycheck. Partners without business are looking for a paycheck. But when you're a partner with business, you really have to think about what that law firm's doing for you. Are they allowing you to be flexible in your billing rates? Are they allowing you to, are they giving you a higher salary, than other law firms? Are they the kind of people that you think you could work with and be comfortable with? What is the partnership like? Are they competitive with each other and just an unpleasant place to work? Are they, there's just also, or is it a cooperative type of firm? I mean, you just need to look at all those things when you're interviewing. And typically when you're a partner with business, you'll have the opportunity to really evaluate a lot of different platforms for what, for to support your business. And one of the things I love about law firms and being a law firm attorney is you just kind of are in this role of owning your own business. I mean, your clients are your business. And so you become a business owner. And as a business owner, you're trying to give your clients the best service possible and give them what they want. And then as a business owner, you're looking for places that will support you. And I just think it's very, very exciting. And people don't often realize like that they own a business. And so owning that business, it's pretty cool. I mean, you own a business, and law firms work for you to provide you the best possible support. So when law firms are evaluating partners to hire that have business, they're always the most thing that they're most interested in is how much portable business you have. That's their number one question. They once they see you are in a certain practice area, law firms will only ask if you have business, and then they'll want to know what your billing rate is and if it's similar to theirs. But it's pretty crazy. I mean, they don't ask a lot of questions like they might with an associate about why you're moving. They're just that's their only question. So if I submit a partner to a law firm and I don't say anything about their business, literally the phone will ring within usually 72 hours, or I'll receive an email with them asking how much business you have. So that's just like the number one question. It's really all they care about. I mean, they care about a lot of things, but that's like just their number one question. If you have business, then they're very eager to talk to you. In most cases, if you have enough business to be self-supporting, there's always going to be interest in you somewhere in the market, in the market you're in, or in another market. So what does that mean to be self-supporting? It means that if you have $250,000 in business, they're going to be comfortable maybe paying you close to that amount if you're going to another firm and they believe that they have work, or that they may be able to give you additional work. And so law firms typically, when they're interviewing partners, they want to get a sense of your last 3 years of business. So that if you just have one good year, they're not going to be as interested. A lot of times when partners start moving, they're often they may be being pushed out, or their compensation's cut, so they have a bad year or 2 bad years, but they're most interested in seeing some sort of consistency. So it's just like if someone was evaluating a business to buy, they're going to be more interested in people that have business that's increasing than decreasing. So that would be, if you were being represented and had a business by an investment bank, the investment bank would be sending your numbers and things to potential buyers or people that would give you money. And they're always interested in seeing something that's increasing as opposed to decreasing. So that's one of their biggest, concerns is that does this look like they're on an upward trajectory or does it look like a downward trajectory? And that would be, if you were buying a business, that would be the same thing that you would be interested in. You'd want to see that business revenue increasing because where it is today is unlikely to be where it is, a year from now. So so here's some general rules. When law firms are hiring junior partners, typically, they're not as concerned about the amount of business as they would be for, more senior attorneys. If they see a junior attorney that is bringing in business and looks like they're very gung ho and the business is increasing, they're often going to be quite interested in them. So, what does that mean? That means you have 250,000 one year, or 500,000 one year, and then 700,000 the next year, and then 900,000 the next year. They're going to really like that, and that's how you're going to be most marketable as a junior partner. More senior partners, they want to see more business, obviously, because you should be, much farther along than a junior partner or someone with just a few years of experience. And so they're going to want to see more business because you should be at a higher level. Larger firms will require more business than smaller firms. So some larger firms, won't even talk to you unless you have like at least $5 million in business. In some cases, maybe even a little bit more. Smaller law firms obviously won't require as much business. And so if you don't have a lot of business, you often are going to have to look at smaller firms. And then major geographic firms in major geographic areas, are going to require, like if you're in New York or Los Angeles or something, they're going to want more business than law firms that are in smaller geographic areas. And the smaller the geographic area, the less business they're going to want. And then many partners, will try to negotiate draws. And when they're getting hired, many times they'll try to get very high draws. And in order to do that, or salaries, the more business you're going to need. So here's the first thing: it's the potential to get or grow business at a new firm. Law firms, partners will move firms for a lot of different reasons. Sometimes they're going to move because they have to and they're being pushed out. Other times they'll want to move to a better firm. So if I call a partner at a mid-market firm and I tell them I have a job for them at a more senior, a better firm, they're often very interested in moving. It's funny. I mean, it's almost every partner out there is interested in moving to a better firm. But they'll often move for a more diverse practice. So a corporate attorney may be at a firm that does mainly only corporate, but they could spin off litigation and real estate to their clients because they have close relationships. So often they'll move for more diverse practices. I'm working with a partner right now that has I don't know, like $1.5 million worth of business, but it's not in his practice area, which is kind of funny. So in his law firm doesn't have the ability to service it, and so he's trying to find a firm that does that, and then could also in response give him litigation work. Sometimes partners are being conflicted out of matters, or the law firm won't take their clients because they're too small. So that's very common. You might have someone, at a really good firm like Gibson Dunn, but they can't bring in clients because the firm just will only look at the largest clients and bring those kind of people in, or our firms in and our companies in, and then sometimes people will move for lower billing rates. So if you're a partner with a lot of business, oftentimes the cost of the work is more than their clients want to pay. So they'll often move to smaller firms that'll give them lower billing rates and often even won't work the matters as hard as a large firm would. And, so law firms are interested in the attorney's story of why they're moving to a new firm. They like to hear that it's going to help the attorney grow their client base, or they'd like to hear that it's going to help them generate new clients. So there's always a story of why someone is moving, and so the law firm does want to hear that why that new firm can help them generate more business. So these are some of the kind of the scenarios. Many times partners will move between firms because the firm that they're at, they may want to move to a larger one, but the firm can't support their existing clients. So they may be bringing in different types of work, and the law firm can't support it because can't support it. So um, just give you examples all day long, but I'm working with a partner in Birmingham, Alabama right now, and she has a pretty stable book of business, I think of $1.5 million. She's at a firm that can't hold on to associates, and where that when she needs support with certain types of transactions that she can't do, the law firm can't do it. And so she's looking for a new firm. A lot of firms will underpay their associates, and so the partner cannot get support because the associates are just leaving all the time. That's a very common scenario. Or sometimes, they can't, like I told you earlier, they can't spin off work. So corporate attorneys, which is really the most marketable type of attorneys out there, corporate attorneys will often be at a firm where where they are, where they can't spin off various types of work that they're doing. So they may want to have the law. They may want to do their clients may have IP work, or they may have real estate work, and they could do that work. They could service their clients at that firm, and right now they're sending it to other firms. So that's a very common reason for moving. And then law attorneys often want to go to a firm with a better brand because they may have clients that are large and are very aware of the brand of a firm, and they want to say they're represented by a firm with a brand name that makes that makes their clients comfortable. So general counsels will often send work to firms that have very good brands, and so if an attorney is at a smaller firm that doesn't have that kind of brand, they'll often want to move to a larger firm. Partners at larger firms often will want to move, to smaller firms, which is common. So a partner with a good book of business like $10 million or something may be servicing mainly middle market clients, and those clients are sensitive. So they'll want to, and so they can't grow their practice because of the billing rates, and so because the firm is, has very high billing rates, so often they'll move to smaller firms. So someone that is unable to do that, will often want to move to a smaller firm. So partners at large firms do move to smaller firms all the time, and sometimes what happens is, if they have insufficient business, the law firm will continually cut their pay, or they may even move them from a very common scenario is the firm will move them from an equity partner to a non-equity partner, and start pushing them out. So how does that work? I have a attorney I'm working with right now that is at a really big firm. I think it's like White and Case, and he has about $800,000 in business, and the firm has basically told him, he's a partner, that he's never going to, probably be an equity partner there, not just because they don't have enough space for someone like him, but also his business isn't, he doesn't have enough business. So if he goes to another firm, he can service those clients, and then also bring in additional clients that are going to better suit him. So some examples are, certain firms will have, they'll look at the billing rates of a partner that's interested in moving, and they just so they'll prioritize higher revenue clients, and then often firms, partners with high billing rates, may want to, join firms that does that. So, firms will also have floors where they may have wholesale rates for what partners can charge that are lower than normal, but they'll only allow a certain percentage of the work that the partners, doing that. And partners also have brands. So law firms will evaluate kind of what that brand of the partner looks like. So what does that brand mean? It means, even at the partner level, really good firms will be concerned about the schools that people attended, often how well they did there. There's some firms like Gibson Dunn that are famous for looking at people's grades, even when they've been things like, Secretary of State and still making hiring decisions about that. Sometimes, law firms will often be very concerned about the previous firms at the larger firms, the previous firms that the partner's been at. They'll be concerned about the same kind of things that they would be with associates, where how long does that partner seem to stay at that firm? And then most partners, will have reputations in the legal community where people will know about them. And so that is something that larger firms are concerned about. And different law firms, have different issues with the attorney's brands. And so you can typically look at the bios of attorneys that are at different firms, and you can get a sense based on the schools and what their background looks like. But again, that stuff is important. But the most important thing is always the amount of business that the attorney has, and then how much of those fees that they bring in they're willing to share with the firm. So different firms will pay different amounts, but different percentage of the business, with the larger law firms typically paying the lowest. So you may have a major firm that would pay partner's compensation might be 20% of the business that they bring in, whereas that they collect. Whereas in a smaller firm, it could be 50, and there's even virtual firms that pay 85%, and all they do is for the attorney is typically billing, and the attorney is responsible if they want to hire paralegals and that sort of thing. Then also firms are concerned with client relationships, like will those clients come over and transition with the partner after they move? And there's all sorts of scams, and I don't know if I call them scams, but there's all sorts of ways that law firms tend to get burned when they're hiring lateral people. So one of the most common scenarios is you'll have like a young partner, typically they're men. You'll have a young partner that is suddenly, is looking for a job after have been at a firm for 2 or 3 years, or been a partner for 2 or 3 years, and they will present that they have all this portable business, and they'll kind of name all these clients, and then they'll move to another firm, and they'll say, oh, these clients didn't come with me, and then they'll do the same thing again and again and again. So law firms get burned by that. I mean, that's a very common scenario where people kind of represent they have all this business, and so law firms will often be interested in like how long have they had those clients, and are those clients willing to move with them. And this is a very common way that law firms get burned. So law firms will be presented with a partner that says they have a certain amount of business, and they'll represent that those clients will come with them, and then they get at the new firm and they've gotten this great compensation, and they'll make up stories about why those partners haven't why that business hasn't come. And then the law firm will realize that it's getting burned, and they'll push them out, and then they'll go to even another firm after that. So larger firms have often get burned by that, and it's just a thing that's almost happening kind of all the time when partners are transitioning in different cities. I mean, that's going on. So law firms like to see relationships with clients that have been going on for some time. And then those collections, they like to see that because it gives them a lot of security when hiring laterally. So large law firms are very interested in partners that have large clients, major banks, things like that, and so that gives them a lot more security than if you have a bunch of smaller clients. So what does that mean? That means you might have a large client that's been giving you over $1 million in business for the past 5 years, and they like that. That's much better than having 20 clients or 30 clients that maybe doing like 100,000 or 50,000 or something per year. And then law firms also look at conflicts. So they don't want to hire attorneys where they have conflicts with their clients. And so typically they're not going to ask a law firm's not going to ask a lot about, clients, who the clients are in kind of the first interview, but they will be interested in that later on. And then, like I told you earlier, your expectations when you're moving and you do have business are typically fall under the rule of thirds. And it's just very interesting because you always see this with compensation. It always comes pretty close to this. So the average way the partners with business are compensated is they often receive about one third of their collections, and then one third for overhead, and then one third is kind of the profits for the partners. And that's typically the way the compensation works. It works differently at different firms, but that's what I've noticed over 25 years, that's really kind of where things, where the compensation falls in. Like I told you earlier, if you're a partner of a business and you don't require any support really, then and you can do all the work yourself, then you can find these kind of virtual firms that will pay you as much as 85%. The larger firms, often it's less than 33%. And then middle market firms are often as much as 50%. Just to give you some insight, if you're a senior associate or if you're a partner, thinking about moving, law firms have all sorts of different formulas about how they will compensate you. And sometimes you will make often a higher percentage of the work that you do. So you might get at a middle market firm, you might get 50% of the work that you do yourself. And then if you give it to someone else to do, you might get 15% of the work that other people do. And every firm has different business models. The largest firms typically have toyed with their business models for years, often decades of how they compensate partners, and they're always interested in trying to have the highest profits per partner because law firms are ranked based on that, and law firms, in order to maintain that, will have very complex business models and ways of compensating people that'll allow them to do that with business. So here's how kind of compensation expectations work. I recently placed a partner that had $30 million in business, and he had a guaranteed base of $7 million. That would be like in a major city. He ended up, he had options to move to smaller firms where that was much higher, but he wouldn't have gotten the kind of support or brand. And like I told you earlier, I had a partner in Colorado. He had $700,000 in business, and he was looking at middle market firms and his compensation. He was moving from a much smaller firm to a middle market firms, and all of the compensation offers he received were between 300 and 450. I mean, all the offers he received were between 300 and $450,000. And so you can see kind of how it works. Middle market firms, you'll often receive higher compensation based on the amount of business. And so when partners, especially at larger firms, are trying to move, often what they try to negotiate or have me negotiate are high guaranteed levels of compensation, and often the law firms will get in trouble and pay them too much. There's law firms like Dewey Ballantyne and some others that actually went out of business because they took out large lines of credit to pay very high compensation to partners that didn't end up bringing over the amount of business that they said they would. And then that amount of money that was going out was so high that it drove the firm out of business. in law firms, when they're hiring partners, setting compensation, they are taking a big risk because a lot of the time when partners move, the amount of business that they say that they have uh, isn't realistic. They will often, the numbers will be fudged, and it's just very, very common. And or they will get to the new firm and the clients won't come, or they'll make excuses that the clients aren't coming after they've gotten this guaranteed compensation. So that typically what happens is then the law firm will give them a runway, and then if it doesn't work out, the law firm will start pushing them out. They'll look for another job and make the same kind of representations again. They'll go do, and then they'll move again. I mean, it's just and then law firms will get burned. But law firms are always trying to hire people with business, and so they're often more optimistic than they should be because because they end up getting burned. And then a lot of law firms will just compensate partners based on a percentage of their collections. That's less common than just giving people, some sort of salary because everybody wants that. And so law firms are like to do that, but most law firms don't. And then, law firm have different cultures, different ways of compensating partners. They have different relationships between partners. So if you're moving to a firm that does a lot of lateral hiring of partners, what often happens is those partners will almost be all kind of just operating independently. They won't be sharing a lot of business. They'll be very competitive with each other. And so law firms that hire a lot of lateral partners often see their cultures just like whatever they were before destroyed. And, so it's just, it can be difficult going to firms that hire a lot of lateral partners because the culture of the firm isn't really as strong as firms that don't do a lot of lateral hiring. So you have to really look at the culture if you're in how people work together and so forth if you're a lateral partner. And so for lateral partners, often they are concerned with compensation, but they're often also concerned with the culture and how they feel that the people there will make them comfortable working, will maybe the culture is to to fairly compensate people, and to represent what they say they will do, because sometimes the partners will get hired at firms. They will give them a guaranteed compensation based on the business they generate, and then the business will be stable. And then after a few years, the law firm will come to them and cut their compensation. So you have to kind of look at that. A lot of partners do not like being micromanaged by management, so they won't like that. And often, they want to be comfortable with how the law firms run, and will they have independence or dependence? How does that work? And different law firms want different levels of control over their partners. The largest law firms will typically exert more control than smaller law firms, but it just depends on the given partner. So these are just some of the rules to kind of think about in the background, but it is important to kind of go to a firm that does what they say they're going to do, and often where it's not like a competitive atmosphere where partners are with their associates they're working with are all working together, and then the partners in different practice groups and so forth aren't competing. So mergers can be very difficult places to work in a firm. Also, if a group comes over to a firm, especially branch offices, that group may not share their work, and they may be competitive with existing people. I mean, there's just all sorts of different ways that things happen. So this is really what I'm going to talk to you right now is very important. It's like, how do you look for a job if you have business? Like, what is the strategies that you need to employ? The strategies I'm going to talk to you about today are something that probably 85% of partners will not listen to because they believe that they kind of know what to do, or they have all these different preconceptions about how to look for a position. But what I'm going to talk to you about today is something that I found, again, in 25 years of working with thousands of people, partners with business. I mean, thousands of partners, and having placed hundreds of them with business. I'm going to talk to you about what is the most effective search strategy. Now, this strategy is very similar if you don't have business, but you really need to listen to what I'm talking about, because if you buy into it, you're going to be, you know, very, you're going to do much better. So when when you're looking for a position, if you're a partner with business, you have to realize that you probably, you're almost always going to be better off applying to more places than fewer. You're not going to be applying to jobs. And so a lot of times it's kind of crazy. Like I'll go to, look at, people that are partners that are submitting their resume in BCG with business, and they're often submitting it because they find one job and they think that that's really their only option. And anytime a law firm gets a partner, it's when you get when they get an associate, they typically will not respond. They will be getting lots of resumes of associates, and so from a recruiting firm standpoint, you're basically taking an associate and they're looking at their qualifications and all sorts of things, and they're putting resumes with the best qualifications on top, and on top, and hiring from that, and they may receive 50 applications. You just don't know. But when a law firm gets a partner resume, they're going to look at it very, very carefully. It always goes to the top of the pile, because that's how law firms survive, is they survive based on hiring partners with business. So if you are looking for a job as a partner, you have to understand that what you're doing is you're looking, you're making a business proposition to the firm, and and is that business proposition something that they like, and do they feel like they can make money? And each firm, when they evaluate a partner business, regardless of how much it is, they're going to be looking at the brand of the firm you're coming from. They're going to be looking at, if you don't have enough business to basically throw off a lot of work. I mean, if you don't have a large book of business that's going to occupy all your time, they're going to look at if they have work available to give you, and that's kind of how it works. So when you're looking for a firm to work in, you really have to look at a lot of places. You can't just look at a couple firms, because there's going to be all sorts of differences in the compensation models, like I told you about earlier. You're going to find different cultures and things when you go to different firms, and you're going to get a sense of that. And just looking at a few law firms is often not the smartest thing, and not in your best interest. I mean, you should be looking, at a lot of firms, and especially if you have a lot of business. I mean, you're looking for, what is the best platform for you? What is the best firm for your clients? And what's going to, work for you? And you can't, by just applying to a few firms, you're never going to get real indication of what firms are best for you unless you have a lot of offers. And you will get a lot of offers, especially if you have a lot of business. I mean, in partners with business, I mean, you could apply to 20 firms and get 5 or 6 offers, whereas, an associate, that's almost unheard of. And so when you talk to firms, you will go in and they will evaluate you. Like, do you click with them, and is your business going to work? And do they think that you're someone that they like and will fit in with their culture? But you need to really understand what each firm offers, because each firm will be different. Each firm will have different qualities of associates. Each firm will have a mix of different practice areas where you can get work from or give work to. I mean, there's just all sorts of things that you need to really look at. Like, will they support you in going out and trying to generate work? I mean, some law firms will represent that they will help you generate more work, but then they won't. So, if the law firm believes when they're looking at you that they can make money off you, hopefully a lot, like now and in the future, they're going to be very, very interested in you. I mean, this is how law firms survive. And you will have, the more business you have, you will have to, you can look at a lot of different places, and you will often receive, a lot of offers. I mean, an attorney, like I told you, in Colorado with, $700,000 in business received, a ton of offers. And the more business you have, the more offers you're going to receive, and the more information you will have to evaluate things. I mean, it's kind of crazy, like the way that partners get jobs. And so sometimes law firms will have a search, or they'll say they need a partner, and a recruiter will call all these people, and the partner, that they end up hiring will have only looked at that firm. And I don't think that that is in anyone's best interest to only look at like one firm. If you have business, and you should be looking at multiple firms. One of the things that most partners do, like 85% of them, is they will not apply to a lot of firms because they involve their ego. They think that if they're rejected by the firm, that's a bad mark on them, or it has something to, lower their brand, or make them feel badly about themselves. I don't know, but they think that it will make them look weak in the legal market, or in the legal community, by applying to places that aren't interested in them, and sending out a lot of applications. And this is just like a huge mistake, because what you're doing is you're not necessarily applying and getting rejected because they like something about you. You're really applying with a business, and you're seeing, and the law firm is buying the business. It's no different, again, like if you were an investment banker and you were trying to get, soliciting, taking that, using the business and sending it to, different businesses, and trying to, sell that business. And you would arrange meetings, and you would, a recruiter will help you negotiate and answer questions. And so that it's no different than an investment banker shopping a business. And that's what recruiters do, but that's what you should be doing too. You're essentially shopping your business to get the best, return, put your business in the best place. And so when you get, if a law firm is not, interested in you, it's not really something, you should be worrying about it. It's just nothing about it is personal. It's just, they're just looking at your business and whether or not they believe that it works for them. And that's it. I mean, they're not evaluating you and saying they don't like you. They're just, does this amount of business, work for them? Now, if you have business, like I told you earlier, the law firm is going to take a percentage of it in return for providing you the home and a place to work. And so you're going to be getting, office space. The largest firms obviously have the nicest office space for their attorneys with business. Quality of the offices, the brand of the firm, like you're going to be paying for a brand. You're going to be paying for support. So that's very important to partners. What is the quality of the associates? What is the quality of paralegals? How many people do they have? Are they going to let you cross sell and get, work from other partners? Like you can go to them and say, I can do this kind of work. Do your clients have this need? So you might want that. Law firms have different reputations and different practice groups. Law firms, may have a different level of commitment to branch offices. And so you need to understand that, like, what is this branch office like? Is it a good branch office? Different law firms will have different commitment and different ways of operating branch offices. And so if you're applying to one of those, it's important. But, law firms are businesses just like you're a business. And so you're paying the business you're paying them for the support based on a percentage of the business that you bring over. And because they're businesses, they will try to often pay you little as possible in return for what they're getting, because they want that money to be profits to be distributed to other partners. And they want to keep their costs as low as they can be to operate a successful business. Many times, if you're a partner and you have business, you can actually often do very well by moving to a smaller market. This is not a common type of move, but often if you move to a smaller market, there may be clients in those markets that are sending work to attorneys that they perceive, are better in larger cities. And if you go there and you are very, very competent, you can often get a lot of work. So I've seen people do things like move to, Indiana or, things like that from Chicago, and just generate huge books of business because there's opportunities in that market that people were sending to other firms. I've placed a lot of partners, from, larger markets and smaller ones, and they've done very well. They they happen typically in all, they're in transactional practice areas, not in litigation, but that's a very common thing that people will do. And you can move with, less business, if you're at a major firm and you're moving to a smaller market than you would moving to another large firm. Solo practitioners are another type of people that I place. I'm always working with solo practitioners, constantly. And, for them, it's often very difficult. So I'm working with an attorney right now that's making $600,000 a year doing all the work himself for clients. And, he pretty much, keeps most of that. So he's making maybe 550, 500. And so he's looking at these firms and the best offers he was receiving are like 300,000. So it doesn't really make any sense for him to move to a larger firm. He's just, he's kind of like very discouraged, and that's something that can happen. But a lot of times solo practitioners won't like all the administrative work involved in their firms, and they don't like, the limitations of having to do everything independently. They don't like the billing, the collections. They just don't like it. So I recently placed a woman that had about $3 million in business that she was doing. She was an immigration attorney with 2 or 3 paralegals. She just hated it. She just hated doing all the work, the stuff herself and managing it. So even though she was clearing, at least a couple $1 million, she was willing to move to a firm that was paying her, less than $1 million because she just didn't like the work. And, and she actually was very happy making that move. And even though she was giving up so much money, but most of the time, unless the platform of the law firm, gives them much less stress and they feel like they can do much better, they're not willing to move. So that's kind of how it works for partners with business. My point that I wanted to make when you're moving, though, is you need to look at a lot of places. You can't just look at a few firms. If you're in a major market, especially, you should be looking at a lot of firms. If you're in a middle market firm, you should be looking at a lot of middle market firms. There's always a ton of them. I mean, if you're in a larger city, there's 100+ firms that will be in your practice area you could look at. If you're at a large firm, there's obviously, and you want to stay at a large firm and you're in a major city, there's going to be a ton of other large firms, and you really need to look at a lot of places because it's going to be the compensation, the support, the type of partnership it is, the way the partners work together, the compensation models, like what do you need to do to make a certain amount of money, like how are things distributed, what is the draw that I can draw or salary they're willing to pay me. There's so many factors, and because the results, of what you're going to get and the offers are going to be so much different, and the firms are so much different. If you look at a lot of places, you're just going to be much better off. And, what are some examples of that? So I work with attorneys at major firms all the time, and they will basically, if I convince them to, to apply to firms, which is, if they're interested in moving, is not that difficult, but they will often, just identify like 2 firms or 1 firm or 3 firms. And they will even pick the firms themselves when there could be 50+ options for them that could result in different results for them. And a lot of times, when they pick those 3 firms, all of them will interview them, or 2 out of 3 will, but they will be, much better served looking at a lot of firms. So I was working with a partner at a large firm that was losing his job, and he was getting pushed out because he had like $1 million in business, and that wasn't enough for them. And so when he was looking at firms, he literally just picked 1 firm. And I was like, this is just crazy. And then, of course, that firm interviewed him and hired him, but he made less money than I thought he was capable of making with that amount of business, and just didn't want to get rejected. So you can't involve your ego. You're selling a business. If an investment banker is representing a business to sell, they're going to look at a lot of options, and, it could be hundreds of private equity companies and VCs and so forth that they're, and other people that are, people to merge with them. And they're looking at a lot of places, and you need to do the same because you're selling a business essentially and doing something for your clients. You really need to look at a lot of places. And unfortunately, this is something that a lot of people don't do. And because of that, they really don't find the situation or they could otherwise be in. And then you have partners without portable business. This is very common. So like I told you earlier, the majority of partners that I work with, don't have portable business. And so I've become very good at placing them. And The first thing is any partner in the business I can always place and get a job for, assuming that it's enough to be self-supporting. Partners without business can always, if they have experience, it's very good in a practice area, meaning they're very specialized. I mean, it could be just general corporate, but or real estate leasing and transactions or whatever it is. They can always find a job without portable business, and there's certain things you need to do that I'll talk to you about, but you can always find a place to work that's going to hire you. So obviously, law firms prefer attorneys with portable business, but you can always find a role. I place partners without business all the time. Every month, I place at least a couple of them. But the difference is when you don't have work, you're basically seeking a job, and you're not trying to sell a business. And so, your primary goal when you're looking for a position as a partner is just to find someone without business, to find someone to give you work, and that's really it. I mean, it's no different than applying to a job, as an associate. One rule of being an attorney, and I just want to kind of bring this up because it's important, is to survive. I mean, you need work. So you're obviously surviving at a much higher level if you're a partner with business, but if you're a partner without business, I mean, you always need someone to give you work. I mean, you always need work that you have on your own. This is the whole, the whole objective of being an attorney. Like, do you have work? And if you don't have work, that's a problem. So, a lot of times senior associates in law firms, they will think the only option that they have is to work in a going house, and so it becomes very difficult. The more senior you get, if you don't have your own work, it becomes much more difficult for you to get work. Now, why is that? Why is it harder for senior people to get work? I mean, I'll give you a lot of reasons, but like I told you earlier, typically partners will get often a percentage of the work that they do and collect. And so if you're a senior, your billing rate's going to be higher than, close to what a partner charges. And so partners are more incentivized to do work on their own that have business than they are to give work to other people. Clients also prefer if the partner that's their, that's their contact, the partner that they're, that they have a relationship with, they prefer that they do the work often than a senior associate that's billing the same amount. I mean, they just would rather that partner do the work. And so, it's much more difficult as you get senior to get others to give you work. It's just, it's very difficult. And that's why senior associates typically will get pushed out of law firms, large law firms, if they don't have business, because, the law firms and the partners there are less incentivized to give them work because their billing rate's higher, and they would prefer to give the work to mid-level associates that are competent than a senior associate without work. So again, clients prefer to have a partner that they have the relationship with do the work. And so law firms would prefer, in most cases, to give work to mid-level associates that, even senior level associates that are, potentially could be partners that are at the firm, than hiring someone without work if they already have people that can do the work. So it's very difficult. I'm going to talk to you about how to get a job, but again, when you're senior, it's much more difficult to get people to hire you to give you work than it is if you're like a mid-level associate or something along those lines. So firms that will give you work, that do have work, are firms with institutional larger clients that senior attorneys can't do. They don't have enough senior attorneys to do. Most large law firms have the model where someone starts out as an associate and then either makes partner or is pushed out when they get senior. So, if a law firm doesn't have that traditional business model and they have work, then they're more likely to hire, hire someone senior to do work for without business. There's law firms all over the country. Like if you're a securities attorney, for example, there's law firms all over the country that have, for example, securities work that they may not have people there because typically people that do securities work are trained in large markets. And so, I place people all the time that might be in New York and get a job in Grand Rapids, Michigan, or a smaller market in like Indiana that might have clients, or so they often will have work that they haven't trained senior associates to do, where they can bring in partners at a lateral level. So recently I was working with a securities attorney that was had moved to like Pittsburgh, but had worked in New York, and he was getting interviews all throughout the Midwest, and in Oklahoma and different places that didn't have anybody to do the work, but he was doing that. I was working with a partner not too long ago that was forced to retire from a big firm, Hogan Lovells or something in Colorado, and he did a certain type of patent work that involved optics. And I was able to get him a job in San Antonio, Texas, with a patent law firm, and he just thought that he would never find a job because he was old and had been forced to retire and didn't have work. But because of his expertise in that particular form of patent work, all I did was I searched the BCG database for firms that had openings for people that did optical related patents, and was able to get him an interview at that firm, and then I think another one, Florida. I recently had an IP litigator that did nothing but IP work. He'd been at a large law firm in Chicago and let go. He was unemployed for like 6 months, and I was able to find him a firm in Louisiana, like not a huge Baton Rouge or something, that had a client that owned a toy company and they were suing people that were copying their toys, and they needed someone with that expertise to do it. And there was no one that was like a IP litigator in that market, and so they hired him. It's so if you have experience in a very specialized practice area, there's always going to be firms somewhere in the country that are going to need someone like you. They're probably not going to be in a large market because large markets will have an abundance of senior associates and things, usually at their own firm to do the work. But if you move to a smaller market, it's much easier. And this is something that I do all the time, and it changes people's lives. I mean, they're in positions where they think that it's hopeless and there's no options for them, and then they're able to move to smaller markets where there's firms that don't have the ability to do that work. There's other practice areas there's some practice areas that are where law firms will have institutional clients that are very common. One of those practice areas that is very interesting is ERISA. So a lot of times law firms will have institutional clients doing ERISA work that need ERISA work. They will need partner level people to service that institutional client. They may have one ERISA partner or two, and if that ERISA partner leaves, the business stays with them, and then they are plugged into that law firm. I've placed more ERISA partners than I can count that don't have business or partner level attorneys, but able to move them to different firms. And sometimes that would even be in a often major market. So that could be Los Angeles or New York or whatever. But those partners with that expertise can move for institutional clients. It's the same thing with tax lawyers. Tax lawyers often they're supporting the corporate department, and so if very highly qualified tax lawyer and that does tax related to M&A is looking for a job even without business, because that's supporting corporate practice, they can often get jobs. And there's just numerous examples of this. Often law firms just don't have anybody doing a certain type of work, but they could cross-sell their existing clients and get work. This is not a major practice area, but I have placed, I think last year I placed probably 15 plus trust and estates attorneys. They are very easy to place even without business, because a lot of middle market firms have all this trust and estates work they could be doing, or even smaller law firms that they're not doing. They're just bringing in all these clients are coming in, and they don't have anybody to do it. So I placed last year, I think, at least 15 senior trust and estates attorneys and even mid-level trust and estates attorneys, just by sending their resume to firms that didn't even have openings. And the law firms are very interested in them. I mean, to the extent that, in some markets, they might have gotten 10 interviews. I mean, they got so much, these trust and estates attorneys got so many offers that often, they might have gotten like 2 or 3 offers through me. And then, but they've, just all these offers and they just get overwhelmed. I mean, it's, so if the law firm feels like they have the work, they will often bring in the attorney. I've also seen that recently with immigration related attorneys, where middle market firms will have immigration work doing, for businesses and things that are bringing workers over from overseas, and they will hire senior immigration attorneys without business. Very, very common. Same thing with employment law. I mean, there's just all these different practice areas. Real estate, is very common. Patent, a good portion of patent attorneys that are senior can always get a job. It's also very common for attorneys that may be senior at major law firms that don't have business to get hired by smaller firms. So you see like people from Skadden and stuff that get senior, like moving to smaller firms that just like their pedigree and that boosts their kind of credibility in the eyes of their clients. And so they like those pedigrees and that can help them generate additional business, or they're willing to pay money for those people, even if they don't feel like they have a lot of work, because it kind of boosts the brand by having people that may have worked at Skadden or whatever the large law firm is. So people will become senior at firms like Skadden and will be able to move to smaller law firms without a ton of difficulty, just because of the brand of the firm they're at. And they can do it in litigation, even in all sorts of practice areas if you're at a major firm. So attorneys that are at major firms that are senior do not need to go in-house. They just need to look at smaller firms and smaller markets often, and they can get hired. Also, a very thing that's pretty easy to place people that are senior without business, or people that are just in different practice areas. Like it could be corporate or real estate or finance, and they don't have any business, and they can move. Corporate attorneys in Delaware are very easy to place, because firms all over the country need them for, you can use them for corporate related work that they have in Delaware. And they will often hire senior corporate attorneys. Real estate can get very active at a lot of firms, and they may not have enough senior people to do that. And so they can transition. It's much harder for litigators and to move without business, but they can too. And there's always firms that have, will have litigation that they can often find in the middle market places. I mean, people that have experience with trials, it's very interesting. Like that do a lot of trial work can often get hired at firms that don't have any people. They have litigators, but no one with trial experience, and so that can happen. One of the easiest ways to move, if you're a partner without business and you're in a specialized practice area, is with boutique firms. So in every city, there are lots of boutique firms. There are firms that may do nothing but environmental work, or nothing but nonprofit work, or international trade, or all sorts of different practice groups. And so there will be boutique firms that may have 3 attorneys or 20 attorneys, and they just have a constant pipeline of work in that practice area. I recently placed in Chicago a senior level environmental attorney that, in a partner job that was actually had been working in the EPA for like 7 or 8 years before getting experience. I think it was at Sidley and Austin for like 3 years. And so, these opportunities are all over the country. There are boutiques that do nothing but corporate. There are boutiques that do nothing but real estate. And the clients like sending work to those firms, and they just have a very active pipeline of work in that practice area. And so they're hiring people, that have that expertise to do the work. I'm working recently with a guy that was at Wachtell for like 12 or 13 years, which is just amazing. He was never a partner there, but then he, moved to a smaller firm, and then whatever for whatever reason that didn't work out, and he's been just kind of coasting with his own practice, working for these small clients. But he's a lot of expertise, and I think M&A from working at Wachtell, and he's getting multiple interviews despite the fact that he doesn't have any business and really isn't employed because of that expertise. And he's getting them, in Washington, D.C. and, in different markets because of that expertise. So if you're a partner level attorney, don't have business, there's always going to be firms that could be looking for you. The most common are the boutique firms. That those are often the easiest. I think that is just because they have a lot of clients in that practice area, and if you're very experienced in a certain practice area, you can transition to those firms often without business. And then smaller markets are, if you don't have business, are in less competitive geographic areas, are often very open to hiring partners that have niche experience that they may not have in that practice area, no book of business. I was talking to a partner at a major firm just about a week ago that, in Detroit, that needed a securities attorney. And, and you can place people without business if you have strong expertise in a practice area in all sorts of states, like, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, just all over the country, Oregon, like just different places where you would never think that there would, that they would never consider. And by opening yourself up to those different types of markets, you can get a job. I was working not too long ago with I was a securities attorney, and he was in Chicago and had left a partnership at a major firm to try to start a business. I think it was in Russia, selling diapers, and then that didn't work out, and so he's been unemployed for like a couple of years, and ended up getting a position with a firm in Seattle that needed someone like him and didn't have any work. And he was just amazed I was able to get him a job because he'd been looking for a job for so long. But I found a firm, that needed someone like him. And the thing to remember if you don't have any business is it's always going to be much harder for you, most often, to get a job in a larger market than it would be in a smaller market, because the larger markets are going to have all these associates that are coming out of large law firms and looking for jobs. And they're going to have usually an abundance of people in your practice area that they can hire. And it's just much more difficult. So I'm going to talk to you right now about the search strategies, like how you should do things. But I just want to make the point that you can always move if you're a partner with business or without businesses, if you're able to market yourself to different markets effectively that most people would not consider. So just looking for a position in your existing market can be very, very difficult if you're if that's all you're looking at. So, it's very sad that a lot of people get senior and they lose their jobs, and they don't know how to look for a position. And really, all they needed to do in order to find one be to look at smaller markets, and they often just won't do that. Many times, they will be sitting and just looking at, like, Indeed or Law Crossing or LinkedIn for partner jobs, and won't follow the strategy that I use to get them a job. They will only look at job openings. But if you're senior, you can always find a job if you're in a specialized practice area. If you're able to, if you're able to look at a lot of firms, there are also certain practice areas in major cities where you won't need business. One of them would be like insurance defense. Insurance defense is a practice area where if a law firm's representing a lot of insurance clients and doing insurance defense, they're always going to have senior level work for people if you look at enough of those firms. So here are some search strategies. If you don't have business, you obviously do not want to look at only jobs. That's not a good way to look for positions. You can certainly apply to senior associate roles often. If you see those, that's just an indication that the law firm has worked for a senior level attorney. So it's very common for me to, when I'm representing a partner without business, to put senior associate jobs in their accounts, and they'll be like, "I don't want to be a senior associate. I'm a partner," and I have to explain to them that that's just an indication that the firm has worked for senior level attorneys, so that bill high rates. So you can apply to those, but your job really when you're an attorney without business is to find firms and partners in those firms that may have work. And so there's all sorts of places that may have work, but you're really not going to know if they have it until you solicit them. And that what does that mean? That means applying to them even if they don't have jobs. The same thing goes with smaller markets. You should be trying to apply to places that may have openings for you. So how does a search like that work? Like I'm working with a partner right now that I think is in where is he? He is in gosh, I'm trying to remember what city he's in like upstate New York somewhere, and looking for a position. And he lives in upstate New York. That's not where he practiced. I think he practiced in uh, maybe was New York and Boston. So he was with those big firms, but for whatever reason, he had to move to upstate New York. And I sent him to all of these law firms, around the country. He applied to, I think, over 500 of them and got maybe 6 interviews. Now, that's a very low hit rate, but he was able to get a job. Whereas if he hadn't done that, he wouldn't have been able to. I have all sorts of examples. I have a woman that was like in Tallahassee or something, Florida, doing some sort of patent work and was able to get a job. I'm just thinking right out of upstate New York, was able to get a job in Rochester, New York, even though, she didn't have the New York bar and she'd never even been to Rochester. I had a funny thing happen where I was representing another patent attorney. He was in Texas and kind of from this, working class family that West Texas that he was living on like a farm or something, and he went to law school in Texas. He went to college in Texas, and he had never been outside of Texas. He literally never been outside of Texas in his entire life, and he was looking for a position, and he got a position, I think, in Philadelphia, and or no, it was Pittsburgh. And what was funny about that was he was making maybe $80,000 a year working for a firm somewhere in West Texas, San Antonio or something. And I helped him. This wasn't a partner, but I helped him look for a position, and he got a position in in Pittsburgh as a patent attorney, and he'd never been outside of Texas, and so he flew into he arrived or Philadelphia or Pittsburgh, I don't remember, but he flew into the city and arrived at night. Then the hotel was in the office building, so he went up and he interviewed, and then he left the firm. Yeah, like at 5 o'clock is the winter, so it's dark, and flew back to Texas and got this job paying like $300,000 a year. He couldn't believe it, but that's the advantage kind of looking at other markets. And so, you need to be looking at more than one market and lots of firms in your market. So, in most cases, I mean, if you're in a major market, there's going to be 100+ firms that may do the kind of work you do. Or, if you're looking at other markets, there's going to be a lot of firms that do the kind of work you do. So, my job as a recruiter is to figure out how to target those firms and get someone a job. And they would never do all this work on their own, but it works. And I when I work with partners, they often find this overwhelming. Like they would almost rather be unemployed or a risk of losing their jobs than applying to so many firms like this. And they just think that this isn't a smart strategy. They're afraid of it. They don't like all the rejection. They just don't like it. But this is someone who is something that works. It works all the time if you buy into it, but most people don't. And because they don't buy into it, they don't get jobs. So that's something a recruiter can do, or you can do. I mean, you can go to different cities and research firms and find places. And if you're in a specialized practice area, it can work. You need to think about a broad search kind of in the way that a company would market their services. I mean, they will have salespeople on phones. They will be sending people letters in the mail. They will be posting ads on search engines. They will be doing all these things to try to generate interest in their product. And you really need to think of it in a similar way. I mean, if you receive mail each day, you're going to receive junk emails. Someone may be offering you send you something about replacing your roof, and they know that if they send 10,000 of those out, 10,000 of those letters, they may get 5 or 10 people to give estimates, and then out of those 5 or 10 people, they may get 1 or 2 people to do a new roof. And so you need to be thinking about marketing what you have sort of the same way. I mean, you need to target the right size firms and the right markets, and you don't need to apply to 500 places. But if you do this and you look geographically and then you go deep in your own city, you can always find a job. I see people like all the time, like associates and partners that are just sitting there like unemployed. And it's just like the stupidest thing that there is. I mean, it's just so stupid because if someone is like a litigator in Los Angeles, there's going to be 2 or 3 thousand firms that they can apply to, and there's going to be maybe 5,000 small law firms with 2 or 3 people or one person that they can apply to, and that would potentially be able to give them work. But instead of marketing themselves effectively to all the places, they sit there and they're unemployed. And the way I always kind of phrase it to people is, when you're an attorney and you're looking for a job, you're representing yourself. And so, what would a really good attorney do, if they were representing someone accused of murder? I mean, they would contact every witness. They would look for everybody that was involved, and they would do whatever they could to help the person. And they would but and you need to do the same for yourself. I mean, you need to really be going out there and representing yourself effectively, or you need to find a recruiter that will do this work. Now, most recruiters will not do this kind of work, and I would say 98% of them won't. We do this for partners because we have a large staff. I mean, I have just on my team, I have like 15 people that help me with my candidates. Then we have 100 people that are doing various research tasks, finding jobs, and helping contact firms for people and doing research of firms in different markets. And so I have a lot of resources, but everything that I'm doing, I mean, if you have the time, I mean, you could certainly do yourself, but it works. And I've used this strategy my entire career. I've been placing people every, several times a month doing this strategy. And almost always, if a partner doesn't have business, I've just found work for them to do. I haven't relied on job openings. Now, I do rely on job openings to some extent. So what would that be? So for 25 years, we've been gathering jobs from every firm we can find, and then we post them on our site, and then those jobs close. And so we can go back and might look at and see a firm that every 2 years or 3 years has an opening for a senior associate in a certain practice area. And so we target that firm, and sure enough, that firm interviews the person. So we use that type of research. But going deep in markets, you can go on Google and you can search for firms. You just type in corporate law firms, Madison, Wisconsin, and you'll get pages and pages of firms. And then you'll also get Google directory listings of firms that do it. And so if you were to contact all those firms in your Madison, even a small market like Madison, there's probably going to be 20 or 30 or 50 firms that do it, and then some very small firms that do the work. And but people don't do that. When you go to sophisticated and saturated markets, it's always going to be much more difficult because there's going to be a lot of senior attorneys there. Those senior attorneys, by the way, will also have contacts in smaller firms, and and it may be applying there, but there's just going to be a lot of them. And because there's so many people that are doing senior level work and associates are getting pushed out and things, it's going to be much more difficult than if you're trying to get a job in a market where there's just not that business model doesn't exist to the extent it does in smaller markets. Smaller markets, people will often start there as associates and be there their entire career and advance, and it's not as competitive as it is in larger markets. And larger markets are just very sophisticated, and it's much more difficult to get jobs. But also, there's a lot more firms. So if you're able to research smaller firms, you can always find things to do. I mean, and what does that mean? It's just like what I'm saying is that, like, if you're any practice area that you're in, almost any practice area, you're always going to be able to find lots of firms that do that work. But if you're even if you're in a larger market, there's going to be small firms. There's going to be firms that may have 5 people, 10 people, 15 people, and if you apply to them and they have the work, they will give you work and they will bring you on. But people don't think like this. You need to be looking at a lot of places, and if you do, you're always going to get a job. You don't need to go in house. You don't need to quit the practice of law. You just need to be able to apply to a lot of places. And I'm really kind of saying this over and over again right now, but I can't emphasize how where how important this is. I was working with uh, a senior associate recently, and she didn't have any business, and she had left her firm because her boyfriend committed suicide, and she had a nervous breakdown. So she was had been unemployed, and she was in Palo Alto and had been unemployed for like 6 months, had applied to every firm that she could think of on her own, Palo Alto, and no one was interviewing her because Palo Alto for corporate attorneys, there's just tons and tons of them. And a lot of markets, especially large markets, if you're unemployed, they have so many people that can work there that they're obviously going to be much more interested in people that are employed, because people that are employed, there's no negative connotation. Like it's just easier to you prefer to hire people that are employed as unemployed. So she'd been in this horrible situation, and I was like, well, you need to look at a lot of different markets, and so I started sending her to firms in Minneapolis and Indiana and Ohio and all these places, and she got a lot of offers, like 7 or 8, and whereas when she had been, where she had been in Palo Alto, she never would have found anything, at the type of firm that she wanted to work at, and she was able to find lots of jobs. And so this strategy works. I tell people about it again and again. Most people don't buy it, but if you look at smaller markets and you don't have any business, and you're in you're in a practice area that you've been doing for a long time, it's not difficult to find a job. And attorneys in large markets often believe that their only option is to go in house, where business is not required. And instead of looking at smaller markets, I want to just, for everyone on this call that thinks you need to go in house, which everyone that gets senior like considers it seriously. I don't like that option for most people. The reason I don't like it, and it can be a very good option if you move into like a giant company or something, and could be a general counsel. You can make millions of dollars a year, but at the same time, most of the time when people move in house, these jobs are not permanent. Like, they're very hard to get, but at the same time, they're not stable, because companies go out of business far more often than law firms. Companies will hire different CEOs, and a different CEO might want to bring in their own legal department. Companies will hire new general counsels, and new general counsels will want their own legal department. When you're in a company, you're a cost center, not a profit center. So you can get laid off. All these things can happen when you're in house, and or a lot of times when you're in house, when a law firm attorney comes over, I mean, they're just very negative, and they tell the company all these things they can't do, and instead of offering solutions and trying to play around do things that are questionable in terms of ethics and things. And so those attorneys will not be liked and they'll lose their jobs. And then when you lose your job as a, when you're in house, it might have been very difficult to find one when you're in a law firm, but it's even more difficult after you've been in house because companies will prefer to hire people often directly out of law firms as opposed to in-house attorneys. And so these in-house attorneys, their resumes are just, littered with bouncing around between different in-house jobs and then being unemployed for long periods of time. I was working with an in-house attorney recently. It was very sad. He was in, I don't know, Durango, Colorado, or something like that. So he'd moved from, I think, Goodwin Proctor in Boston, or now it's called Goodwin, to this city. He'd been there for he got there, he bought a house, he was there for 3 months and then lost his job and didn't have enough income coming in, not a lot of savings. And I did the same thing with him. I'm like, you got to look at all these firms. He's like, that's not what I'm not comfortable with that. And so he just kind of, is there, with a house and kids and trying to find another in-house job and not have any luck and afraid to apply to a lot of firms. And so it's very dangerous when you go in-house, and it's actually pretty scary because there's just not the type of employment stability you could get in a law firm that has work. If you're able to apply to a lot of places, you're more likely to be hired. Another thing is that law firms prefer to hire people, even small law firms that are coming from law firms, because you're more likely to be a generalist when you're in house, and law firms hire specialists, and then people that are in house typically will be feeding a lot of work to law firms and not doing sophisticated work on their own. And so it's just it kind of can destroy your career. Just another thing that I like to mention is when you're in a law firm, I mean, you can if you have a business. I've placed attorneys like in their late 70s in good sized firms that have business, and so you can practice law, especially if you enjoy it. If you graduate from law school at the age of 26 or 25, you can be doing it for another 60 years. But if you make the decision to go in house at the age of 30 or 35, your career is just not going to be able to stick around as long. If you learn how to get business and things, you're going to have a long-term career, and you're probably going to make more money and maybe be happier. So, I like that. So, if you're an attorney without business, you really should be looking at, in a specialized practice area, you need to research and find all the boutiques that do whatever practice area you're in, because, like I said earlier, those boutiques will often have a lot of senior level work for attorneys without business. A lot of these boutiques, like that I see all over the country, I'm placing a woman right now that's in New York City in a boutique corporate firm, and she's another person that's been unemployed for 6+ months, and I found this boutique firm for her. And so they have work, and the people in the boutique firm, it's just amazing. They're all from Skadden and Paul Weiss and these really awesome firms, and they have a lot of work. And so she was able to find, that firm through me, which I researched. I'm constantly doing research, and these boutiques are just popping up, literally, I mean, almost several times a week. I mean, there's a new boutique popping up where people are splitting off from different firms and stuff, and we find those. So, I place probably at least one partner level attorney without business in a boutique firm every month. I mean, just consistently, month after month after month. And a lot of times, these are firms I don't have a pre-existing relationship with that I'm just finding by having my staff do this research. And the research is pretty easy. You search Google and find it, or you look for legal, newspapers. You read those, and you see articles about boutiques popping up. How powerful are boutiques, by the way? Like how powerful is this method of finding these boutiques if you don't have any business? I mean, it's like a nuclear bomb for a job search because it just is so effective. It's unbelievable. So, but I don't know, 10 years ago, I was sitting there and I was reading, this legal newspaper, San Francisco, whatever the legal newspaper is there. And I saw this article from this boutique, and they were saying something like, I've never seen so much corporate work in my entire history. We're just, buried. We don't, we have all this work. It's just crazy. And I'm quoting this partner, and I saw this article, and I was like, wow. I had this partner that had been unemployed for like 3 years, and he was in a really bad situation because of a scandal. He had been a partner at a good mid-sized firm in Los Angeles, then had gotten this job as a commissioner for the SEC and moved to Washington, D.C., and then had was married and had married another woman in Washington, D.C. And so he was married to two women at the same time. And this all came out with these like scandalous news articles. So he lost his job at the SEC. And then because everyone knew about what had happened to him, he uh, he couldn't get another job. And so I was sitting there and he was just completely devastated. When I met him, he was like biting his lip and like shaking and just in a really, really bad place and telling me how he used to own a big house and everything. And it's like very sad. And so I saw this article and I sent him to this firm and they hired him and he just couldn't believe it. Like he was like, "This is crazy." And he was in Los Angeles and got this job in San Francisco, and he was very, very happy. And then that firm ended up merging with a big firm like Deckard or something like 6 months later. So all of a sudden now he's a partner at Deckard, and I don't know if it was Deckard or DLA. It might have been DLA Piper. But anyway, he merges and he gets a job at this big firm just in this boutique that merges. And there were some other people that I placed there as well. I had a woman that was in Portland, and she was and she had been a one first year associate with, and she'd in law school had been sexually harassed by this professor. So the professor was fired, and then when she got to this firm in Portland, like she'd been there like 6 months or something, and then all of a sudden they hire this professor, and he's like down the hall, and she tells the firm about it, and then they go and talk to the professor, and he denies that none of this happened, and then they act like she's making everything up, and so she ends up leaving and had been unemployed, for months, and I sent her to the same firm, and they hired her, and it changed her life, and all of a sudden someone that had only gotten a job in like a small firm in Portland is at DLA Piper. And I think there was another person I placed there as well. I don't remember who exactly it was, but this kind of stuff happens. Reading legal newspapers in like Florida, I've placed like a lot of real estate attorneys in Florida that are senior without business just by finding articles and things about firms that are doing all this real estate work that are small. So these are very easy placements to make. And there's lots of these firms all over the country that are good boutiques. I told you earlier about the person that was an environmental attorney in Chicago. I got a job in a boutique. The patent attorney that was big, maybe it was, I guess it was Fort Worth. And then another in an antitrust boutique in Washington, D.C., like a senior attorney that had been looking for a job for like 3 years. I mean, she's still employed at her firm, but there's just these boutiques all over. And if you don't have any business, you can always find them. And a lot of times they have a lot of work, and so they're very easy to get jobs in, and very few people like think about this. The other thing I brought up earlier is you can apply to senior associate roles. So if a firm has a senior associate job, all that means is we have work for the people that can bill to our clients that are very competent at a high billing rate. And so that's really what it means. So if you're a partner without business, you should be applying to every senior associate job you find, and hopefully, in your market, but also in other markets. And so people, like, literally, I'll be working with a partner, and I'll send them some senior associate jobs, and they'll be like, "Whoa, Harrison doesn't know what he's doing." Like, and then they'll stop working with me. And but this is a way to get jobs. It's not that hard. I mean, you're just tracking down people that have senior level work. So senior associate means senior level work, and you can apply there. Other attorneys, what can be effective is to create a business plan. Many times, um, law firms will look at that. There are business plans that I believe I posted online, example business plans. You can do those. Uh, those are something, that law firms will often look at and take seriously, but in the majority of time, they won't. Attorneys often do this that are in large law firms. People at Sullivan and Cromwell that are senior often do this, and they talk about how they can bring in all these clients, and then clients are conflicted out, or the law firm dropped the client because for whatever reason, and so they can often make a case that they can develop business at a new firm. Firms will pay attention to those. They will read them, but they're always kind of suspect because the attorney, the question is often like, if you have this great business plan, why didn't you do this at your existing firm? And so they're kind of suspect. One thing that I often do is I have business plans that sometimes these attorneys that have like tens of millions of dollars of business will follow this way, like they're posting, something on LinkedIn every week, and they're doing all these different things and making at least one or two presentations per year or whatever, and they'll actually have really good business plans that they follow, and having something that you do consistently to put yourself out there is actually important, and you can do these business plans. What I do a lot of times is I'll send my partner candidates who don't have any business a business plan, and they won't really fill it out. They'll just kind of copy it, but you want to have like a compelling narrative. I was recently working with a income litigation partner at a large law firm, and he had this niche that he had discovered by billing code violations or something, where something was going on with billing codes, and it was plaintiffs related work, and he was seeing all these small law firms filing these plaintiffs cases, and making tens of millions of dollars or $100 million plus in fees. And so he became very, very interested in that, and was able to present this as an opportunity to a lot of law firms that he knew how to do these cases, and even had lined up litigation funders that would support him at a new firm, and was able to take that business proposition to different firms and get hired. So that was kind of cool. But most business plans aren't that compelling. The idea of a business plan is to show that you're if you're at a different platform, then you would be able to, generate work in business. And if that is, believable, then law firms will often hire you even without business. And so, the deal with, looking for work if you don't have a lot of business is, you may be shocked often of what the compensation is compared to what you're making. Sometimes if you're like a senior associate in a major law firm, I mean, you can make, over 500 or even $600,000 a year sometimes. And then when you're looking for a job without business at another firm, you're often, making much less money, but you might have more employment security, and you may be in a situation also where you're going to lose your job, and then, like I told you earlier, you always want to have access to work. So if you don't have access to work, you're in trouble. So if your access to work is threatened, especially for senior associates, the firm will come to you and be like, basically, like, you need to start looking for a job. There's no future here. And so you should be looking at a lot of different firms. Senior attorneys without business will, even if you're a partner, will be asked to leave, and or your job will be threatened. And so, that's pretty scary. I remember I was at a New York law firm, Dewey Valentine, and they had a Los Angeles office, and I was working there. And they had taken on a couple smaller law firms to open a branch office, and a lot of those people didn't have business. And so I remember I was there as a third year associate, and I was on this floor, and I, by the time I was 6 months in, they had let go like 10 partners, and they were the whole like office, like the whole floor I was in. It was like it had been evacuated, and there weren't a lot of, all these partners were gone. And so, a lot of those people just didn't have jobs when they lost their jobs. And so, if you don't have business and your job's threatened, you need to be looking for places, and your compensation could be just dramatically different. I mean, if you're, you can make as a income partner. I mean, large New York law firm, 800,000 or more per year. And if you're let go, I mean, should be prepared to make even a couple 100,000 many times. And so, you have to be also concerned with kind of this journeyman syndrome. So a lot of times there are people that are in practice areas like project finance and capital markets and international arbitration, where they might have like 15 years of experience, and a law firm may bring them over, like a bankruptcy or something, like Millbank may hire them as as a senior associate, but they will keep them around for only a couple of years, and then they will let them go. And then the person will kind of be lost. They'll be like, what do I do? I mean, I was talking this summer to a guy that I placed, I think it was at Millbank, and he was one type of corporate work, and I'd gotten the job there after he'd been unemployed, and he was actually from Australia and needed to be working in order to keep his visa or something, and he lost that job, and I helped him. I'd helped him before, but he was the kind of guy that didn't want to look at smaller markets. He wanted to be in New York, and didn't look at a lot of firms, and ended up having to move back to Australia. And I called the guy, and it was kind of sad because I think his wife, or maybe he wasn't married, but he had a child there, and they lived together. And so he had to move back there, and then just kind of taking these jobs. I've seen a lot of people get jobs that are senior, but they only keep them around for whatever the large law firms for a couple of years while their work is busy. So you're often better off trying to find a firm where you're going to have a long-term job instead of just something where you're kind of a journeyman. And that's kind of tough. And it's tough when you're in practice areas that are only done by large firms. But you really always should be looking for employment stability. You should be looking for a place where you're always going to have access to work, or is going to provide you a platform to generate business over time. I wanted to make just a couple of points, because this is an important part of the presentation, because I want to make sure that I'm giving you kind of advice that's going to really help you in the long run. What do partners and what do people do that get a lot of business? They spend almost as much time developing business as they do working. So, people that I've worked with that have had 10, 20, 30, $40 million in business, they, even from the time they were like associates, a lot of the time, they might build 2,000 hours a year and then spend another 2,000 hours a year developing business and trying to get clients. One guy that I worked with that was a partner at a mid-sized firm in Los Angeles. From the time he was like a second year partner, he actually got a driver to drive him around LA meeting with clients and developed this, huge book of business, but he was spending half his time doing it. So you need to spend a lot of time on client development and trying to learn it. You don't need to be the most outgoing person either. I remember I was at Quinn Emanuel and Bill Urquhart, who's no longer alive, but he was one of the founding partners. He said that you don't need to have any type of great personality or anything to generate business. He said that the biggest nerd in LA or something, the biggest partner, the biggest nerd he knows is has the most business, meaning the guy doesn't have any real good personal skills, but he had, $100 million or whatever, so anybody can generate business. And so I just kind of want to leave you with that to, realize that, once you generate business, you're in a position where the law firm's working for you and not the other way around. You're in control of your career. You can practice into your 80s and, make a lot of money. And, some of these people with these, guaranteed salaries are like $10 million plus per year. I mean, you can really go far in the legal profession and have the life of your dreams if you learn how to do this. I mean, yeah, it's just freaking amazing. So, a partner, you need to understand the dynamics. You need to be positioning yourself as a business. If you can, if you have business, you need to realize that you are a business. You need to have a proposition, value proposition, and you need to um, and then you need to, if you have a business, you need to find the best place for it. There's so many opportunities for you. If you have portable business, it's just insane. You will, always be able to find someone to hire you. The more business you have, you'll be able to find often a much better platform. If you have business, you need or don't have business, you need to be applying to a lot of places. You need to be applying to a lot of markets. You need to be very aware of boutique firms that can hire you without business. But anybody can get business. Can get a job as a senior. If you don't have business, as long as you're in you're in a specialized practice area, you're always going to have opportunities. You're going to need to be, you're going to need to be able, be flexible. You're going to need to be able to look at a lot of markets. You're going to be able to look at a lot of firms in your market. But literally, anyone can find a job. But your goal is to find a place that's stable. I don't know what this is. This is you can always submit if you're on this call and you're or watching this. You want to submit your details. I will always try to work with most senior associates and partners that have are specialized in a certain practice area. Yeah, I'm currently considering transitioning to a smaller firm from big law to achieve better work-life balance. How can I address potential concerns from smaller firms about whether my experience and expectations align with their operational structure? So I think your question is, your expectations are to work at a firm that has better work-life balance. And in terms of work-life balance, like one thing I like to kind of tell everyone that's important is law firms are businesses. And so, what a business is going to do is if things get busy at any firm, they're going to be interested in having people, they're going to want people to work hard. So that's kind of the first thing. But smaller firms typically, the hours are not as long as they are at larger firms. There's a lot of reasons for that. One reason is often that the smaller firms, the clients may not be open to people billing as many hours and so forth. So that can sort of limit that does keep the hours a little bit lower, which can happen. Firms in smaller cities, the hours are typically much better. It's kind of interesting. Like I place a lot of people from New York and upstate New York, and they go there and their salary is maybe 60, 70% lower, but the cost of living's lower, the work-life balance is lower, the employment stability is more. and they often and they're home like for dinner, at a normal hour and stuff, and can to pick their kids up from school if they want. So you can often get that in smaller firms, and especially in smaller markets, are more likely to give you a better work-life balance. So it really depends on the firm and how much money the attorneys are trying to make there and how important that is. So if you're able to, transition to a firm with better, it's smaller, often you are able to get a better, better lifestyle, I guess is a way to put it, than you would at a larger firm. Is there a rule of thumb multiplier in terms of book size to salary? Or I guess a divisor, if you bring a book that's 500, 600,000, what would be the salary to the expected range? So if you have a book of 500 to 600,000, at a mid-sized firm, I would think you could make, 250 maybe or 300, and possibly more if the law firm has a lot of other work. But typically, at the mid-sized firms with that amount of business, you'll typically be compensated a much higher percentage of that business than you would be at a larger law firm. A larger law firm is not going to be that interested in that amount of business. I mean, they'll think it's okay, but if you move to smaller firms, will typically make more. So the rule sort of is, I think, in terms of the way to think about it, would be smaller firms will pay a higher will pay a higher percentage, as a of your work to salary that you receive, and the larger firms will end up being much less. So, I work with people all the time that have like 500,000 in business, and then when they move to smaller firms, they will typically, get, more, often more than 50% or 50% or 60%. But if you were to go to a larger firm, it would be much less, and that's just kind of how it works. So, but the general rule for partner compensation is, this is kind of how the general rule that where things come out most of the time when you're looking at all firms of all different sizes, but the general rule is 1/3 to you, 1/3 to partner profits, and then profits, and then the other 1/3 to the kind of overhead, which should be whatever the overhead of the firm is, offices, IT, etc. So that's kind of how that's the general rule of compensation, and that's where things come out most of the time. Not always, but most of the time. So that's how most partners then end up getting compensated, something along those lines. And then, typically the larger firms, maybe, maybe even a lot, maybe, could be, larger firms can be, lower, be like 20%. It just depends on the firm. So it's typically the better support, the better the brand, the larger the firm, the more the lower the percentage of your business often. Okay, I've heard that law firms are increasingly looking for partners with specific industry expertise. If I want to transition to a niche market where I have some experience but not extensive depth, how can I demonstrate credibility and expertise to a firm in that space? Okay, so what happens often in smaller markets? So in smaller markets, in niche markets, I guess you're talking about, smaller markets will have more generalists. So most smaller markets, the attorneys are likely to be generalists in their practice area as opposed to specialists. So what does that mean? I mean, so that means, if you're in, say you're in New York City, you may be, you're going to be in corporate, you may be doing, something like M&A for health insurance company. I mean, I'm just giving you an example, but this is true for health insurance companies. There may be, that specialized or even more specialized. That would be like in a large market. So large markets, the attorneys are more specialized in their practice area because clients in New York are obviously paying a lot of money, so they want very specialized attorneys. So that may be something that you would be doing as an associate or senior associate or even an income partner. You might be doing something like that. But if you move to Cleveland, Cleveland, or even maybe a smaller market in Cleveland, but if you move to Cleveland, you might be doing general corporate, I don't know, M&A, and maybe, I don't know, whatever, private equity. You might be doing a bunch of different types of corporate, and so you'd be more of a generalist there. That's typically how it works. But there are, firms in Cleveland where they might have people that are doing just securities, but primarily, the smaller market, the more likely you are to be, a generalist. So they will like it if you have very in-depth experience in one practice area, but you're much more likely to be a generalist in those markets. Why would you be a generalist? Because the clients there's just not enough work often for people that are very specialized in a certain practice area when you go to smaller markets. So that's just how kind of that ends up working, for most of the time. So, if you're in a niche market, it's easier to get jobs often as a the generalist than a specialist. Okay, what are some signs that a law firm is generally open to hiring partners without business versus those that claim to be but are actually focused on revenue generation? So you just signs would be that the law firm, is growing in that practice area, that maybe lots of partners are being hired, and those partners may have a lot of business, or that the law firm is a boutique, could be an example. But typically, when you're applying to firms, you need to be you need to be broad in your search, because you're never really going to know if those law firms will be open to to hiring you unless you try, because you don't know what the work's like in that in that firm. You have no way of knowing if they have enough work, so you have to often just apply. Some other signs would be senior associate jobs. So they have jobs for senior associates, et cetera. Then they may be open to hiring partners if they're if they have openings for senior associates, because that's obviously high work that they can bill out at a high level, and so that's one thing to look for. You can also look at what are called archive jobs on Law Crossing. So archive jobs are jobs that were open in the past, were open in the past. And so if you see a pattern of if you see a pattern of firms that had senior associate jobs consistently, then that can also be something that can show you that they're likely to have work for senior people. So that's another thing. And then looking at the firms and seeing what things look like in their practice area, the type of clients they have. So often you'll look at firms in different markets, and you'll just be amazed that they're representing these large clients. And if they have large clients, then that's often a sign that they may have work if they don't have a lot of people in that practice area to do the work. So that's another sign. And there are firms like that all over the country. What are some red flags to look for, law firms look for in candidates during partner level transitions, and how can I proactively address or mitigate these concerns in my application during interviews? So the reds, it depends on business, but The red flags are often, red flags are going to be, a lot of movement. So a lot of movement that suggests that your book of business is not performing. A business is not real or not performing. That's one red flag. Another red flag would be, if uh, you know, that's kind of the biggest one. Red flag would be that the biggest one is going to be just a lot of movement, meaning if you're moving a lot, probably what's happening is you're getting to a firm and you may have promised business, or you may said you were going to generate business, or you had clients and then that didn't work out. So law firms are always looking for that. And then if they're hiring you, without business, then the biggest thing they're kind of looking for is, is your personality such that you're going to be able to work for other people and be happy with that. I mean, that's kind of, I guess, another thing. And then but the biggest one is just going to be a lot of movement. So a lot of movement suggests, whether you did that as an associate, if you did that as an associate, that suggests that maybe your work isn't that good. And if you're moving a lot as a partner, representing that you have business, that's often a sign that you really don't have business. And so those are kind of the big red flags. And if I didn't answer that well enough for you, I mean, you can maybe ask a follow-up question, and I will answer it. Okay, if I've had a gap in my career due to personal reasons, how can I address this during the partner level interview process in a way that reassures firms about my readiness to contribute immediately and effectively? So yeah, so people do have things that happen all the time. I'm working with a woman right now in Florida, from Alabama, that her husband died, and that created all sorts of issues. And she lost her book of business because she couldn't work and was taking care of her family. And so you can always address that. The biggest thing is how long was that gap, and then how long were you practicing without a gap before that happened. So law firms will look at that. The biggest thing I think to understand when you're unemployed is that if you're unemployed, then and you're competing for jobs with people that are employed. If you were a law firm, you would, and this is what they do, is you would prefer to hire someone that is employed, because that suggests stability. It suggests that wherever you are, you're doing enough. You're doing good work. The longer you're employed, but people do have gaps in their careers all the time, and you can certainly talk about whatever that reason was. If you were sick, or you had a family emergency, or you had to take care of a parent, or whatever, you can always talk about that. You need to come in and act like you're really hungry and you want to work, and this was just an aberration in your life, and won't occur again, or you just need to kind of talk about that. But I place people that are unemployed all the time. But when you're unemployed, you need to be finding places where you're putting yourself into competition with no one. I mean, you're the only applicant. So that's really the most effective. And then telling people that you have a history of billing a lot of hours per year, and all this sort of, I mean, working really, really hard. And if you're able to show people that that's kind of who you are, as opposed to whatever this gap is, then people are going to be more likely to be interested in you. A lot of times too, law firms are sympathetic to people that have had, that are coming back. So if you've been unemployed for a while, and you really want to come back, then law firms may believe that you work even harder, and you'll be grateful for the job, and that it's a good hire. So they'll think about things that way. One thing, I don't know what your personal reason is, but women will often leave to have kids and then want to come back. And law firms, there's obviously a lot of women partners and things in law firms, and law firms are often will not hold that against them at all. So women that have left to have kids and so forth and taken a couple of years off or 5 years off and they want to come back, law firms will often hire them. I saw this thing not too long ago with this woman that literally had been at Davis Polk for like a year or two in New York, and then it had kids and had wanted to come back like 18 years later or whatever, and they hired her, which is pretty amazing. So back. So law firms are actually very, will hire women that have left to have kids and often, be very nice about it and understanding, compare it, and put them into competition. Even if there's a job, we'll seriously consider them compared to, with candidates that may be employed. Okay, I understand that law firms prioritize revenue generation, but are there specific skills or experiences such as leadership, mentorship, or niche expertise that I should highlight during interviews? How do I frame these strengths in a way that resonates with hiring partners? So a lot of times, there are partners that are very good with working with associates and being a mentor or heading up summer associate programs and things like that. Law firms, unfortunately, do not look at that like in a way where it's going to where it's that positive. They tend not to care about that as much. They are very interested in people that have a niche expertise. So anytime you have niche expertise, you're pretty much always going to be able to find a job somewhere because the more niche that is, the fewer people there are that you're in competition with. So I like to give this example. I don't know if you're an associate, but I mean, just as an example, if you take people, sorry, 5, 6, 10, 15, 20, I'm just giving you an example. So, say you graduate, say I don't know, there's, 20 people, that start out as an associate doing real estate, law. So, after 2 years, maybe 17 are left, after 5, maybe, 6 and, or 12. And then after 10, maybe, 7 or 6 or 5. And then after 15, maybe 3. So, this is, first year associates in the market, year associates in the market. So, it's, so in any market, like there's going to be fewer people that are doing that practice area, the more senior you get. So that means, that there's always going to be fewer people several years on than there would have been, than there are, initially, when there's new attorneys. So what happens is, the longer you're practicing, the fewer niche people there are. And if you were to take, even a more, really small practice area, and this might be New York City, the same thing, that there would be, maybe after 15 years, like 2 of those people doing a risk or 3 in the city. And then and so there's fewer. So anytime you're in a niche practice area, you can be, very marketable, and that can help. But, if you don't have business, law firms are looking for soldiers and not generals. So what does that mean? That they want someone that's just going to be working really, really hard, and not someone necessarily that's going to be a leader or mentor people. They're looking for soldiers, and so you need to be able to frame your experience and so forth, and look like you're going to be a soldier that's going to work really, really hard if they're hiring someone without business. So that's really the most important thing. You go in, you're deferential. When you look at people that are senior and are successful without business, they will follow the partner with business around. They'll just kind of be at their beck and call. They'll be very, very nice to them. They'll be very, very humble. They'll be very appreciative that they have the work, and will basically kiss ass, and that's how they're successful. as opposed to someone that's a general that is out there trying to do lead and do all these things. That's less important to them than someone that's going to be a soldier, work really hard, be at their beck and call, and so forth. So, but being a specialist is a great thing, and so that would be New York City. But imagine how many people are specialized in a smaller market. So that when you move to smaller markets, that's obviously something that benefits you a lot. All right, next question. Let's see here. And if you want anybody, if I'm not quite answering your questions the way you want, you can ask follow-up questions, and I will sure I answer them better for you. Are there alternative compensation structures or roles that firms might offer to partners without significant business? For instance, I've heard of firms creating specialized positions focused on practice development, training, or operational leadership. Yeah, so law firms will have roles for people that aren't necessarily practicing in that working in that practice area, where they'll be doing, like you said, practice development, where they'll be creating training systems and things for associates. So that there actually are a lot of jobs like that. So if you look online, you will find some firms that are looking for people to do that and those sorts of roles. So those sorts of roles are typically advertised. They're not going to be roles that firms will create. So you can kind of look for them. Those are sort of staff attorney or salary roles that aren't going to make as much as an attorney. I don't know about operational leadership, but sometimes they will bring people into recruiting roles to screen resumes and to talk to new people and to do HR related work. So there are roles like that. There are people that go into law firms and they can be chief operating officers, like just the same kind of titles that people have in companies. So, but typically, if you propose those sorts of roles, the law firms are going to be, and the things you can do for them. Those sorts of roles are cost center roles, meaning that the firm is going to have to pay someone without necessarily without that person generating revenue. So that is something that when you propose it is less likely to be successful than I guess than trying to do something than if they have an opening. So you will always when you look online, whether it's on Law Crossing, Indeed, or LinkedIn, you will find firms that have those sorts of openings that you can do and apply to. But at the same time, you have to realize that with all those roles, they're more likely to hire someone that currently is doing that sort of role in another firm than they are someone that's just trying to come in and do that as a new hire because they don't know if they're going to work out. And if you were a firm, you would prefer to hire someone that already has experience doing that. Okay, what are the best ways to network as a partner without business when traditional channels focus on client development? Should I target in-house counsel, other partners at law firms, or professional organizations to make meaningful connections? Okay, so yes, you can target in-house counsel or partners at other law firms or professional organizations. There's a lot of channels for client development. One of the things that I would say to you is if you're interested in generating business, you should try to build up a huge bio of papers and talks and professional organizations that you're part of and all these different things on your bio. So when people are looking for a specialist to do the work, that you look like the best person. So what does that mean? So bio needs to be powerful. So and you can you can write articles on your own. You can do all sorts of things to look like you have a very powerful bio and papers, talks, professional organizations, all these different things, sending articles you've written to general counsel, looking like a specialist in your practice area. So, one example that I like to give is like imagine that you had, some very serious type of cancer. Well, if you had some very serious type of cancer and you were looking for a doctor, you might see one bio where the guy says, "Hey, I do general cancer and I've also did a residency in orthopedic surgery." And then you might see another bio of some guy that did nothing but, or doctor, women doctor that does nothing but whatever your type of cancer is, like small cell lung cancer. And that's all they've been doing. And they've given these presentations and written these articles and have been, this huge bio of all this stuff that they've done and that done fellowships in small lung cancer. I mean, that would be the person that any reasonable person would hire if they had some very serious type of small cell lung cancer. So it's the same thing with general counsel and people seeking people to do the work. Like if you look like the best person, they're going to hire you, and they will often just find you by doing searches online. So that's just one way, is to have a powerful bio. And then, targeting in-house counsel. In-house counsel are going to hire the best person for that matter, or the firm with the best brand. So you just need to look like you're the best person for that, and you need to, be contacting them. Other partners in law firms are also a good source of referrals if they don't do that type of work or they're conflicted out. So the firm Quinn Emanuel in Los Angeles was able to become, eventually 1,000-person law firm. When I was there, when I was Quinn Emanuel, they only had like, 40 attorneys, but they didn't compete with firms like Latham and Watkins and all these, big firms for corporate related work. All they did was litigation. So they got a lot of their work initially from firms like Latham and Watkins that would send them litigation work that they were conflicted out of. So, or they wouldn't do. And so, you can get work from partners in other law firms in the same way if you're a litigator or if you're, regardless of your practice area. I saw this woman that was very interesting. She had been a first year bankruptcy associate at a firm in, or litigation associate at a firm in Delaware. And she lost her job and started her own law firm with just her that would help partners around the country with these corporate related filings and things in Delaware that they needed to do. And she just would contact partners at all these law firms around the country to get that sort of work, and built up within a couple of years, like as a solo practitioner, like a $500,000 book of business, just by targeting people that might need help in Delaware. It's absolutely incredible. And didn't even have experience in that practice area, but was in Delaware where, it's hard to become licensed in Delaware. So that was effective. Professional organizations can help you as well. But obviously, professional organizations are going to be filled with people in that practice area that may want to keep their work. But, being a member of those organizations can help you as well, make connections, and you can get work for them. But, most people that are trying to network and get business are making business generation an important part of their job. They're not just waiting for work to appear. They're going out and spending a lot of time trying to generate work. So, litigators at different firms may, get copies of all the lawsuits that have been filed in the court, wherever they are, courts around the country. I mean, and they'll start calling the companies and things, offering to help them, with their defense or whatever these cases. And so that can be very helpful as well. So that's another way to network and to get work. But if you want to develop your own book of business, you need to make getting work a priority for yourself in terms of in terms of what you're doing. You need that generating work can be is very important. Can you recommend recruiters that understand the Australian market? No, unfortunately, I can't. Do that. I don't really know of any recruiters in the Australian market. Let's see here. Okay, here, and thank you. Someone asked a follow-up question about niche market expertise. So I want to talk about that because I didn't answer that correctly. And if I didn't answer your questions correctly, just you can re-ask them and I will answer. Okay, I think you got the question about niche market expertise wrong. I believe the question was, how can you improve your credentials for a specialized practice area where you have some experience but are not yet an expert? So one of the things that most transactional related attorneys do and is important is to build up a transaction sheet. So if you have done some work in that practice area, then you would want to have a list of the type of transactions you've done, or if you do litigation, certain type of litigation, you would want to have a list of the type of work that you've done on a transaction sheet that's part of your bio or in your resume. And then when you write your resume, if you're trying to get a job in a specialized practice area, you typically would lead and talk about that niche right at the beginning of the description of your current job, and then really de-emphasize or eliminate anything that is not related to that. So, the typical resume may say, I did M&A, general corporate, whatever, just, talk about, and then, various corporate related stuff, related stuff. And so a lot of people might, on the resume, they might basically, they'll talk about all of the corporate related stuff they did, and they'll have all this information, just all this stuff about, all this stuff about corporate work, general corporate work and stuff. And then they might talk about M&A, at the end with like one or two lines, just briefly. So, your strategy with your resume if you're trying to find a job is really an M&A would be to just go M&A and then just have, all this stuff about, M&A, for a little bit, and then just have, maybe a little bit of a description about, general corporate, like right there. So, but that's not what people do. People typically mix it around. So, when someone reviews your resume or your bio, there's a thing that I talk about when I represent candidates is, what is the scent of the resume? So, you need to look, and the scent means, what does the resume make people think? So if the resume makes people think this person does M&A, then that's going to help you get an M&A position or get M&A clients. And instead of doing the opposite, which might be to, just talk about, all this corporate stuff you did and then have a line or two about it. So the bio needs to, emphasize the practice area. And so people need, even if you don't have a lot of experience in it, your bio and your resume needs to basically be focused on that practice area. So some people, like they may have, job one, general corporate, and and M&A, and job, or I don't know, job three, and then job two might be all general corporate, and then job, general corp, maybe all general corporate and some real estate, and then job one on their resume may be litigation. I mean, this is literally how some resumes read. So what you would do, and or if you're trying to get a job at M&A, you would just say, you would have it, M&A, and then a little bit about general corporate, and then if or none, and then if job two is general corporate and real estate, you would just basically say your title, so whatever your title is, like associate or whatever, and then job one's litigation, you would just list your title, associate. You wouldn't even talk about all this other nonsense, because you want people to basically look at your resume and see nothing but M&A. I did this for a trust and estates attorney recently, and his resume was even more, messed up. He had, maybe, job three had maybe, 2 years of, trust in the States. And then, the rest of the stuff was, was like, just, nonsense. It was like, insurance defense and I don't know, just all this other crap. And then, this might have been like, just something random, IP litigation, so he wasn't getting any interviews and he had, and his resume kind of listed all this, and it was even worse because it was like, 5 years of doing this, and then this was like, 3 years of this, so he was, only 7 years in and had only done 2 years of trust in the States. And I did this with his resume, and he went from getting like no interviews to like, 5 or 6 interviews and 2 job offers within like, a month. And so your resume just needs to have the scent of one practice area. If you've done all this other stuff, you just don't talk about it, and you make your resume look like one thing. And then you do the same thing with your bio on your website. And then if he did 2 years of trust in the States, then what I told him is just, list everything you've done, and you've done with a lot of detail. And so, when people looked at his resume, suddenly, all I saw was trust in the States and all this stuff. And, it gets even more serious. You can even more to give your resume and your background a scent of stuff. Like he was doing all this stuff too, like in his law school, he was listing, I don't know, all these different associations, that had, con law award, I don't know, real estate attorneys association or real estate, I don't know, real estate club or whatever. I don't know, just all this stuff that had nothing to do with anything, best grade and, in contracts or something, just all this ridiculous stuff that had nothing to do with his practice area. And so, I had him take all that off and just list your law school. And then at the end, he had, that he was he was a licensed real estate attorney or a licensed real estate agent, all this stuff that had nothing to do with his practice area. So we took it all off. And then, you looked at his resume and all it did was talk about trust in the States, and then took all this stuff off in law school. And the previous job might have been like just something stupid, job before law school, was I don't know, he was whatever. I mean, what would it be? I don't know, if it was finance, I don't know, something just random. Worked in a, I don't know, worked in a internet, tech company, or something as an executive. I don't know, so as a, I don't know, whatever. But so we just, you took off his job before law school. There's just no reason to list it because the same thing, it has nothing to do with trust in the States. So people look at your background, all they see is trust in the States. You're going to do much better. It's the same thing you would do if you were, again, hiring a doctor. I mean, you would want someone that was an expert. So you have to make your resume appear to be like an expert in that niche, and then you have to make your your bio read that like you're an expert in that niche. And if you're able to do that, then you're going to be much better off and get more jobs and more people to hire you, especially if you're trying to get business. I mean, you want to look like an expert in that, and you don't have to have, if you have some experience, you just emphasize some experience as opposed to a to looking like you're doing a bunch of different things, because the resume needs to have a scent, your background needs to have a scent of that sort of stuff. Okay, during the webinar, you highlighted the importance of cultural fit and partner level transitions. Can you elaborate on what specific indicators or actions law firms use to assess cultural fit, and how can I ensure I convey alignment with the firm's values and practices during the interview process? Okay, so cultural fit, different law firms have different cultures. So the the best law firms are able to maintain their culture despite lateral hires and they just have a very strong culture. So what's interesting about law firm cultures is you have some firms like Sullivan and Cromwell, uh, Wachtell, and that don't even hire laterally, like they hardly ever, because they're so concerned that they want a culture where the associates are, all the associates there are not hired laterally, so they maintain their culture and they're just very insular and they have very well defined cultures. You have some other firms that I think have great cultures and they really maintain them, like Latham and Watkins, Gibson Dunn, O'Melveny, White and Case, Skadden, like all these places that really do have their own unique cultures. And so you go in and you just get a sense of the types of people that are in the firm. Cultures are going to be different depending on the firm. So a lot of times, middle market firms that do a lot of hiring laterally with partners and associates, they kind of mess up their culture and become one of not fun places to live or to work, because the culture is just all kind of no longer exists because they've done so much lateral hiring. So, when you interview with firms, you will often just get a really good sense of, what is the culture of this firm like? Like, how does this firm, what is it like specifically the culture? So, you'll get a sense of it when you're interviewing and whether or not you kind of fit in there. I mean, there are law firms that, you walk down the halls and you just never hear anything. I mean, people are just very, very quiet. And other ones where everyone's talking and having a good time. I mean, you just don't know. I mean, you only know when you get in there. And typically, you will either click with a culture or you won't. There are law firms that are filled with Republicans, and there are law firms that are filled with Democrats or far left Democrats or far right Republicans. There are law firms that are filled with, people. I remember when I came out to Los Angeles, I interviewed with this firm that's no longer in existence, Heller Ehrman, and I interviewed with their Los Angeles office, and I couldn't believe it. Like, it was a small branch office, but I was interviewing with all these men. They were all men, and the majority of them were gay, and they were wearing like I don't know, just tight T-shirts and lots of bracelets and things, and American Spirits cigarettes on their desk. I mean, it was just very unusual, and that's a certain type of culture. Different firms just have different cultures, and you get a sense of them when you go in there. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with everyone gay, but I was, it was just such a interesting culture. I mean, because it was nothing like where I was from, the Detroit area, and and there are firms that are comprised of college people that were college athletes, or firms that are all women, there are firms that are all African Americans. I mean, there's just all these different types of firms, and so you'll get a sense of the culture when you interview there, and whether or not you're comfortable there. And I think that the culture of a firm really determines how successful and happy you'll be. I mean, at the firm. So, the cultural fit is a very important thing, and you need to really click with the culture. Otherwise, you're not going to do well there. I remember when I was just interviewing for summer associate jobs in New York. I couldn't believe the difference of cultures. There were like so many different cultures of the firms I was interviewing with, and I found a firm that had a culture that I really fit in with. But it's there's just different cultures kind of everywhere, and you need to really try to click with the culture. Because this is the last question, so if anyone has any follow-up questions, you should answer them right now. So this next, or you should ask them right now before the webinar ends, and I'll answer as many questions as people have. This may just be the last one. Some firms advertise of counsel or non-partnership trust positions for senior attorneys. What is your opinion of those positions? So of counsel is a position for people that are very good in a practice area that just don't seem like they have what it takes to be a partner or to work as hard as a partner or to generate business. And the law firm just kind of makes the conclusion that that sort of person is never, will not likely be partner. Of counsel can mean different things at different firms. I mean, if you become of counsel at Skadden, like that's actually a really big deal and difficult to be. It's like probably more difficult to be a partner at 95% of all firms do come of counsel there, but in general, of counsel just means someone without business that's doing work for partners and is other with business and is very good in their practice area. That's kind of what of counsel means. Or it's a title given to people that may have the ability to eventually generate business, but have not, you know, you know, have not yet. And then non-partnership roles for senior attorneys, those are often advertised as well. A non-partnership track job is typically, a staff attorney type job. So, people that are offered, those types of jobs are more like staff attorney jobs. Often they will have those jobs in sometimes kind of weird practice areas. Like one of the most common is trademark law for some reason. I think it's because trademark law tends to be smaller transactions where there's not a lot of money involved. And so often you will see non-partnership track positions in things like trademark law. But those positions are typically, there's not a lot of future in them. Then if it's a non-partnership track job, you will be the first to be let go when there's any type of, slowdown in the work. So, but those works, non-partnership track positions are good for a lot of people because they will provide a salary. The hours are typically much better, so you can leave at 5:30 when the other associates are working all night and so forth. So those can also be decent jobs. One thing to remember is whatever the title of the job, there's always going to be the opportunity to move up, if you're able to eventually generate business. Okay, well, thank you for being on this webinar today. I think topic is incredibly important. If you stayed for this webinar, it's been 3 hours. I hope you've learned a lot because a lot of times people don't understand this, and understanding all this stuff can keep you employed in law firms and really gives you kind of an understanding of, the big thing is that how you can be employed and then what you can do to improve your situation and the importance of looking at a lot of places. So thanks everyone for being on the call, and I will be back next week. Thank you.